I never thought my own flesh and blood would become my prison warden. But here I am, 58 years old, listening to Marcus's car pull out of the driveway, knowing he just locked me in this basement for 2 whole weeks while he goes on vacation with his girlfriend. If you think you've heard family drama before, wait until you hear what happened next. Write in the comments if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved unconditionally. My name is Rosalind, and for the past 15 years since my husband died, I've been living under my son's roof, believing I was a burden he graciously carried. How wrong I was. Marcus had been treating me like his personal servant, controlling every aspect of my life, taking my social security checks, and making me feel grateful for scraps of respect. But what he didn't know was that this basement would become the place where I'd discover the truth about everything. The metal door slammed shut with a finality that made my heart skip. I heard the deadbolt slide into place, then the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor above. Marcus was making sure I couldn't escape. "I'll be back in 2 weeks, Mom," he had shouted through the door. "There's enough food and water down there. Don't try anything stupid." The irony was suffocating. My own son had just imprisoned me like I was some kind of criminal. But as I stood there in that dimly lit basement, something inside me refused to break. Maybe it was the years of accumulated anger, or maybe it was divine intervention, but I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had 2 weeks alone, 2 weeks to think, 2 weeks to plan. If Marcus thought he could break my spirit by locking me away, he had another thing coming. Let me tell you how we got to this point. After my husband Robert died 15 years ago, I was lost. We had been married for 32 years, and suddenly I was alone in a world that seemed to have no place for a grieving widow. Marcus, who was 28 at the time, offered to let me move in with him temporarily while I got back on my feet. What I thought would be a few months of mutual support turned into 15 years of systematic abuse. At first, Marcus seemed like the perfect son. He helped with funeral arrangements, dealt with insurance companies, and took care of all the paperwork that seemed overwhelming to me in my grief. I was so grateful to have someone handling the details while I mourned the love of my life. But gradually, that help became control, and that control became imprisonment. "Mom, you don't need to worry about money anymore," Marcus had said in those early days. "I'll take care of everything. You just focus on healing." It seemed reasonable at the time. I was drowning in paperwork and legal documents I didn't understand. When Marcus offered to handle my finances, I thought it was a blessing. Within 6 months, Marcus had moved me out of the house I shared with Robert, my house, though I didn't know it at the time, and into his small apartment. "It's just temporary," he assured me. "Until we figure out the best long-term solution." That temporary arrangement lasted 15 years, moving from apartment to apartment as Marcus changed jobs and relationships, always with me trailing behind like unwanted baggage. The control started slowly. Marcus would intercept my mail, claiming he was protecting me from scammers and bill collectors. He took over my bank accounts, saying it was easier if everything was consolidated under his management. When I wanted to visit friends or family, there was always a reason I couldn't go. The car wasn't available, I wasn't feeling well enough, or we couldn't afford the gas money. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly," became his favorite phrase whenever I questioned his decisions. "The grief has affected your judgment. Let me handle this for you." And like a fool, I believed him. I thought my son was protecting me when he was actually systematically stealing my life. The worst part wasn't the financial control, it was the emotional manipulation. Marcus had a way of making me feel guilty for existing, for needing food, for wanting basic human dignity. "Do you know how much it costs to take care of you?" he would say whenever I asked for anything. "Other people my age are traveling and enjoying their lives, but I'm stuck taking care of my mother." I started believing I was a burden. I started thinking I should be grateful for the roof over my head and the food in my stomach, even when that food was often just scraps or expired items Marcus didn't want. I stopped asking for things I needed, stopped expressing opinions, stopped being a person and became just a problem that Marcus had to solve. The physical abuse never happened, Marcus was too smart for that. But the emotional and financial abuse was constant and devastating. He would yell at me for using too much toilet paper, for watching TV programs he didn't approve of, for talking too long on the phone with the few friends who still called. He monitored my every move, criticized my every action, and made me feel like I was slowly disappearing. When friends tried to reach out, Marcus would tell them I was too confused to talk, too sick to visit, too fragile for social interaction. Gradually, those calls stopped coming. People assumed I wanted to be left alone in my grief, when in reality, I was being isolated against my will. The basement incident was the culmination of 15 years of escalating control. Marcus had been planning this vacation with his girlfriend Kelly for months, but he was worried about leaving me alone. Not because he cared about my well-being, but because he was afraid I might try to contact the outside world or discover something I shouldn't. "I can't trust you not to cause problems while I'm gone," he had said the night before he left. "You've been acting strange lately, asking too many questions about money and wanting to see documents you don't understand. I think some time alone will help you remember how good you have it here." The strange behavior he was referring to was me asking to see my social security statements and wondering why I never received any mail from banks or government agencies. I had started questioning why I never saw any evidence of the accounts and benefits that should have been coming to me as Robert's widow. Marcus's solution was to lock me in the basement with some crackers, bottled water, and a bucket for a bathroom. "2 weeks alone will give you time to think about your attitude," he had said, as if I were a misbehaving child instead of a grown woman who had raised him and sacrificed everything for his well-being. But Marcus made a critical error. He assumed I was the same broken, defeated woman who had been accepting his abuse for 15 years. He assumed that isolation would make me more dependent, more grateful, more compliant. He had no idea that those 2 weeks of solitude would become the catalyst for the most dramatic transformation of my life. The first thing I noticed was how different the basement looked without Marcus hovering over me, criticizing my every move. For years, he'd forbidden me from really exploring down here, claiming it was his private space and I had no business poking around. Now, with nowhere else to go and nothing but time, I began to really examine my surroundings. The basement was much larger than I remembered, with several storage areas I'd never been allowed to access. There were boxes stacked everywhere, old furniture covered with sheets, and filing cabinets I'd never seen before. It was like discovering a whole other world that had been hidden from me. I spent the first few hours just walking around, touching walls, opening boxes that had been collecting dust for over a decade. Most of it was junk, old Christmas decorations, broken furniture, clothes that didn't fit anyone anymore. But as I continued exploring, I started finding things that didn't make sense. Why were there so many boxes labeled with my name? Why were there photographs of me and Robert that I'd never seen before? Why was there furniture that looked exactly like pieces we'd had in our old house, furniture I thought had been sold or donated when Marcus moved me out? Then I found something that made my blood run cold. Hidden behind a stack of paint cans, partially covered by an old tarp, was a metal filing cabinet I'd never seen before. It was old but well-maintained, and it was locked with a combination lock that looked like it had been recently installed. The cabinet was locked, but years of living with my late husband had taught me a thing or two about getting into things that were secured. Robert used to lock everything, not out of secrecy, but out of habit from his military days. He always said that if something was worth keeping, it was worth protecting. I found a bobby pin in my hair and started working on the lock. It took me almost an hour, but eventually I heard that satisfying click that meant I had succeeded. My hands were shaking as I pulled the cabinet door open, not knowing what I might find inside. What I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about my life. The cabinet was full of documents, bank statements, insurance papers, property deeds, investment portfolios, and every single one of them was in my name. Not Marcus's name, not joint accounts, but accounts that belonged solely to me. I sat down hard on an old crate and started reading through the papers. According to these documents, I wasn't the penniless widow Marcus had convinced me I was. I was wealthy, very wealthy. The papers showed multiple bank accounts with balances that took my breath away, investment portfolios worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and life insurance policies that had paid out substantial amounts when Robert died. The numbers were staggering. According to these documents, I had over $800,000 in various accounts, plus investments that had been growing for 15 years. $800,000 that Marcus had been hiding from me, making me believe I was dependent on his charity while he lived off my money. I felt sick. All those years of being told I was a financial burden, all those times Marcus made me feel guilty for needing basic necessities, all those moments when I begged for small luxuries like a new dress or a dinner out, and I had been a wealthy woman the entire time. But the discovery that truly broke my heart was a stack of letters at the bottom of the cabinet. Letters from Robert to me, written during his final days in the hospital. Letters that Marcus had intercepted and hidden from me for 15 years. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unfold the first letter. It was written in Robert's careful handwriting, the same handwriting that had written me love notes for 32 years of marriage. My dearest Rosalind, the first letter began, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you, and I'm sorry for that. I know how hard it will be for you to be alone, but I need you to know that you're not as alone as you might feel. I had to stop reading for a moment because the tears were making it impossible to see the words. This was a letter from my husband, written when he was dying, and I was only now reading it 15 years later. I've made sure you'll be financially secure for the rest of your life, the letter continued. There are accounts and investments that will provide for you, and the house is paid off and in your name. But I'm worried about Marcus. I've seen changes in him lately that concern me. He's always been focused on money, but lately there's something harder about him, something calculating that worries me. The letter went on to express Robert's concerns about Marcus's character and his fear that our son might try to take advantage of me in my grief. It included detailed instructions about where important documents were stored, which lawyers and accountants to contact, and how to access various accounts and investments. I've hidden copies of everything in the basement filing cabinet, Robert wrote. If something happens to the documents in the safe, if someone tries to convince you that you're penniless or dependent on their charity, go to the basement and find the truth. You are a strong, intelligent woman, and you don't need anyone's permission to live your life with dignity. There were 12 letters in total, each one more heartbreaking than the last. In them, Robert shared his love for me, his hopes for my future, his concerns about Marcus, and detailed instructions for managing my finances. He had tried to prepare me for widowhood, tried to protect me from exactly what had happened, but Marcus had intercepted every letter. One letter was particularly painful to read. It was addressed to both Marcus and me, and it was Robert's attempt to have a conversation with our son about treating me with respect after his death. Marcus, Robert had written, your mother has been the center of my world for 32 years, and I need to know she'll be treated with love and respect after I'm gone. She's not a burden to be managed or a problem to be solved. She's a remarkable woman who deserves to live her remaining years with dignity, independence, and joy. The letter went on to explain that while Robert appreciated Marcus's willingness to help, he expected that help to empower me, not control me. He had specifically structured his will and financial arrangements to ensure I would be independent and self-sufficient. But Marcus had never shown me that letter. Instead, he had spent 15 years convincing me that Robert had left me with nothing, that I was a burden he was generously supporting, and that I should be grateful for his grudging charity. As I continued reading through the documents, I found something that made me gasp out loud. Robert had left detailed instructions about a hidden room in the basement. According to his notes, there was a section behind the water heater that opened to reveal not just storage space, but a complete workshop with tools, supplies, and most importantly, a landline phone that was connected to a separate service account. If you ever feel trapped or controlled, Robert had written, if anyone ever tries to isolate you or make you feel helpless, remember that there's a way out. Behind the water heater, there's a hidden room with everything you need to communicate with the outside world and take control of your situation. It took me 3 hours of searching, but I finally found the hidden latch Robert had described. It was disguised as part of the water heater's housing, but when I pressed it in the right sequence, I heard a soft click. A section of the wall swung open like something out of a movie, revealing a room I never knew existed. The hidden room was incredible. Robert had created this space as his private retreat, but also as an emergency backup in case anything happened to the main phone lines in the house. It was larger than a closet but smaller than a bedroom, with built-in shelving, a small desk, and everything perfectly preserved. There were photo albums I'd never seen, medals from Robert's military service, and boxes of memorabilia from our early marriage. But most importantly, there was that phone, sitting on the small desk like it had been waiting for me all these years. I picked up the receiver with trembling hands, half expecting it to be dead. But I heard a dial tone, clear and strong. After 15 years of Marcus controlling every call I made, every person I spoke to, I finally had access to the outside world without his knowledge. The room also contained detailed instructions Robert had written about who to contact if I ever needed help. He had researched lawyers, accountants, and even private investigators who specialized in elder abuse. He had been thorough in his preparation for protecting me, but I had never known any of it existed. My first call was to the bank listed on the account statements. It was after business hours, but I reached an automated system that allowed me to check my account balances using my social security number. What I heard confirmed everything the documents had told me. I was indeed a very wealthy woman. The next morning, I called again and spoke to a customer service representative. After providing my social security number, my maiden name, and other identifying information, she confirmed my accounts were active and accessible. Mrs. Rosalind Thomas, your accounts have been dormant for quite some time, the representative said with concern in her voice. We've been trying to reach you for years regarding various investment opportunities and account updates. The address we have on file shows no recent activity, and we were starting to worry something had happened to you. I explained my situation carefully, without revealing too much about the abuse I'd been suffering. I told her I had been living with family members who had been handling my affairs, but now I wanted to take back control of my own finances. The representative was sympathetic and professional. She explained that she could reactivate my access to online banking immediately, and that there were several accounts and investments that had been growing over the years without any withdrawals or management. Mrs. Thomas, I need to tell you that there have been numerous attempts to access these accounts over the years, she said. Someone has been calling regularly, claiming to be your son and requesting information about your balances and investment performance. We've never provided any information because we didn't have proper authorization, but the calls have been persistent. My heart sank as I realized Marcus had been trying to get access to my money for years. He knew it existed, knew it was substantial, but the bank's security measures had prevented him from stealing it outright. So instead, he had kept me ignorant and dependent while living off the smaller amounts he could access through my social security and any joint accounts Robert might have left. Within an hour, I had access to online banking and could see the full extent of my wealth for the first time in 15 years. Not only did I have the money Robert had left me, but smart investments and compound interest over the years had grown my portfolio significantly. I was looking at account balances that represented true financial independence. But more than the money, I felt overwhelming grief for the life I had lost. 15 years of believing I was poor and dependent, 15 years of accepting charity and feeling grateful for scraps, 15 years of having no control over my own existence, and all of it based on lies. I called my sister in California next. Margaret and I had been close before Robert died, but Marcus had gradually cut off contact between us, claiming she was too busy with her own family to worry about me, and that I was too emotionally fragile for long-distance relationships. Rosalind. Margaret's voice was filled with joy and surprise. Oh my God, I've been wondering why you never responded to my letters and calls. I've been worried sick about you for years. You've been calling? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Of course I've been calling. I've sent letters, birthday cards, Christmas presents. I even flew out there 2 years ago to visit, but Marcus said you were too sick to see anyone and that it would be better if I didn't upset you with reminders of the past. Each revelation was like another punch to my gut. Marcus had been systematically isolating me from everyone who cared about me, everyone who might have questioned the situation or offered help. He had created a perfect prison where I was completely dependent on him for information about the outside world. Margaret and I talked for over an hour, catching up on 15 years of lost communication. She told me about her grandchildren, about family members who had asked about me, about holidays and celebrations I had missed because I thought no one wanted me there. Rosalind, something has been wrong for years, she said. The few times I managed to speak with you, you sounded different, defeated, anxious, like you were afraid to talk. And Marcus was always hovering, always ready with excuses for why you couldn't visit or why I couldn't send you things directly. My next call was to a lawyer. Not the family lawyer Marcus had been using, but a firm I found online that specialized in elder abuse cases. I spoke with an attorney named Sarah Mitchell who listened to my story with growing concern and barely contained anger. "Mrs. Thomas, what you're describing is systematic financial elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and fraud," she said firmly. "These are serious felonies, and what your son has done to you is not just morally reprehensible, it's criminal. We can help you not only regain control of your life but also pursue criminal charges if you choose to do so." We spent nearly 3 hours on that first phone call, going over my situation in detail. Sarah explained that Marcus's actions constituted multiple crimes: financial abuse, fraud, identity theft, and unlawful imprisonment. She said that cases like mine were becoming increasingly common as adult children took advantage of aging parents, but that most victims never reported the abuse because they were ashamed or didn't realize they were being victimized. "The fact that you've been locked in a basement is grounds for immediate criminal charges," Sarah said. "But beyond that, the financial manipulation you've described represents years of systematic theft. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been effectively stolen from you through deception and manipulation." Sarah agreed to start working on my case immediately. She would begin by securing my financial accounts, ensuring Marcus couldn't access anything, and then start the process of removing him from any properties or legal arrangements he might have insinuated himself into over the years. But I wasn't ready to play all my cards yet. I had been underestimated and controlled for 15 years, and I wanted to use that to my advantage. Sarah agreed to work quietly behind the scenes while I gathered more evidence and prepared for Marcus's return. "The element of surprise will work in your favor," she said. "Let him return thinking he's still in control. Let him think you're still the same defeated woman he locked in that basement. When we spring the trap, it will be complete and devastating." She also put me in touch with a private investigator named David Shen who specialized in financial fraud cases. David agreed to start documenting Marcus's activities immediately, tracking his spending, his lifestyle, his assets, and building a comprehensive case for prosecution. Over the next few days, I transformed that hidden room into my command center. I printed financial documents, made lists of all the ways Marcus had betrayed my trust, and started making comprehensive plans for my new life. I contacted a locksmith who agreed to come out during Marcus's absence and change all the locks. I reached out to a moving company to help me organize my belongings and separate what was mine from what Marcus might have claimed over the years. I even started looking at apartments and houses, though I quickly realized I didn't need to rent anything. I could buy whatever I wanted. The most empowering moment came when I called the utility companies. For years, Marcus had told me all the bills were in his name and I should be grateful he was taking care of everything. It turned out that wasn't true at all. "Mrs. Thomas, all of these accounts have been in your name for 15 years, the electric company representative told me. We show regular payments, but they're all coming from your bank account. Has there been some confusion about the account ownership?" The same was true for gas, water, internet, and even the cable television. Everything had always been in my name. Robert had made sure of that before he died. Marcus had been paying my bills with my own money and taking credit for it. I had the utilities transferred to new accounts that Marcus couldn't access. I changed passwords, updated contact information, and ensured that all future bills and communications would come directly to me. I also contacted the insurance company and made a discovery that filled me with rage. Not only was the homeowner's insurance in my name, but Marcus had been filing me as a dependent on his taxes for 15 years while living in my house and spending my money. "According to our records, you're the sole policyholder," the insurance agent told me. "If someone else has been making claims or changes to your policy without your knowledge, that constitutes insurance fraud. We'll need to investigate this immediately." By the end of the first week, I had taken back control of every aspect of my life that Marcus had stolen. But I wasn't done. I spent the second week preparing physically and emotionally for his return. I exercised in that basement for the first time in years, doing stretches and simple workouts that made me feel stronger and more energetic. I meditated, prayed, and practiced conversations I wanted to have with Marcus when he returned. Most importantly, I started planning my new life. I researched apartments in nice neighborhoods, looked at senior communities that offered independence with support services, and even considered buying a small house where I could live on my own terms. I also used my newfound financial freedom to make the changes I wanted to see immediately. Using my own money, and what a liberating feeling that was, I had furniture delivered, new clothes ordered, and even arranged for a cleaning service to come in and make the house spotless. The most satisfying part was going through Marcus's room and removing everything that belonged to me. All those items he had claimed as his own over the years, electronics I had paid for, jewelry that had been gifts from Robert, even clothes he had bought with my credit cards, I packed them all up and put them in my room where they belonged. I discovered that Marcus had been intercepting my mail for years. In a box under his bed, I found not just Robert's letters, but birthday cards from friends I thought had forgotten me, invitations to events I never knew about, and even checks from distant relatives that Marcus had forged my signature on and cashed. Each discovery was like another knife to my heart, but also fuel for my growing determination to take back my life completely. I photographed everything, documented every piece of evidence, and added it to the growing file that Sarah and David were building. One of the most painful discoveries was a stack of Christmas cards from Margaret, my sister. She had been sending them every year, along with photos of her grandchildren and updates about her life. Marcus had been throwing them away without telling me, letting me believe that my own sister had forgotten about me. There were also letters from old friends, invitations to reunions and social events, and even sympathy cards from Robert's death that I had never seen. Marcus had stolen 15 years of relationships, 15 years of connection to the world beyond his control. But perhaps the most devastating discovery was a letter from Robert's lawyer, dated just 6 months after his death. The lawyer had been trying to meet with me to discuss Robert's estate and ensure I understood my financial situation. Marcus had intercepted that letter and all subsequent communications, then told the lawyer I was too grief-stricken to handle business matters and he would be managing my affairs. I called the lawyer immediately. He was still practicing, though he was nearing retirement himself. When I explained who I was and what had happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Mrs. Thomas, I've been wondering about you for 15 years, he said finally. Your husband was very specific about ensuring you maintained independence and control over your finances. When I never heard from you directly, and your son insisted on handling everything, I was concerned. But legally, there wasn't much I could do if you weren't initiating contact yourself." He agreed to meet with me as soon as possible to review Robert's estate and ensure everything had been handled according to his wishes. He also offered to serve as a witness to the abuse I had suffered, since he had contemporary documentation of Robert's concerns about Marcus's character. Each phone call, each discovery, each piece of evidence made me stronger and more determined. By the time I heard Marcus's car in the driveway 2 weeks later, I was not the same woman he had locked in that basement. I was Rosalind Thomas, property owner, wealthy widow, and a woman who would never again let anyone make her feel small. I had positioned myself in the living room, sitting in a new chair I had purchased with my own money, surrounded by evidence of the changes I had made. I wanted Marcus to see immediately that everything had changed, that the balance of power had shifted completely. When Marcus walked through the front door, dragging his suitcases and whistling some tune from his vacation, he looked tan and relaxed. He had probably spent my money on fancy hotels, expensive restaurants, and activities with his girlfriend, all while believing I was locked in the basement, learning to be more grateful for his generosity. He didn't even look toward the basement door at first. I think he assumed I was still down there, broken and waiting for his mercy, ready to apologize for whatever behavior had prompted my imprisonment. "Mom?" he called out, his voice carrying that familiar tone of fake concern mixed with annoyance. "I'm back. I hope you learned your lesson down there. We need to have a serious talk about your attitude and your future behavior." "I'm in here, Marcus," I said calmly, my voice steady and strong. The look on his face when he saw me sitting in the living room was something I'll treasure forever. First confusion, how was I out of the basement? Then growing panic as his eyes took in the changes around him. New furniture, new decorations, and me, looking healthier, more confident, and more self-possessed than he had seen me in 15 years. "How did you get out?" he demanded, his voice rising with panic and anger. "I locked that door. I put the heavy dresser in front of it. There's no way you could have moved it by yourself." "I've always been more resourceful than you gave me credit for," I replied calmly. "But the real question isn't how I got out of the basement, Marcus. The real question is how you're going to explain what you've done to me for the past 15 years. That's when he noticed his suitcases wouldn't roll properly over the threshold. I had changed the locks while he was gone, and his key no longer worked. But more than that, I could see him starting to notice the other changes. His gaming system was gone from the entertainment center. His favorite chair had been replaced. The refrigerator he always claimed authority over was now stocked with food I had chosen and paid for with my own money. "What's going on here?" he said, his voice cracking with fear and anger. "What did you do? How did you afford all this? You don't have any money." I stood up slowly, savoring this moment I had dreamed about for 2 weeks. Every second of humiliation, every moment of degradation, every time he had made me feel worthless and powerless, it all led to this moment of truth. "That's where you're wrong, Marcus," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I discovered some very interesting things while I was in that basement. Things you never wanted me to find. Would you like to know what I discovered?" The color drained from his face completely. His hands were shaking as he set down his suitcases, and I could see the exact moment when he realized that his carefully constructed house of lies was about to come crashing down. "I found bank statements showing that I'm worth over $800,000, I continued, watching his face crumble with each revelation. "I found property deeds proving that this house belongs to me, not you. I found investment portfolios that have been growing for 15 years while you convinced me I was penniless." Marcus tried to bluster, tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, but his heart wasn't in it. He could see the strength in my eyes, could hear the confidence in my voice, and he knew the game was over. "But that's not all," I continued, enjoying the look of growing panic on his face. "I found letters from your father, letters you stole from me 15 years ago. Letters where he warned me about exactly what you were going to do. Letters where he tried to protect me from your manipulation and greed." "Mom, let me explain," he started, his voice weak and desperate. "No," I interrupted firmly. "You've done enough explaining. You've spent 15 years explaining to me why I should be grateful, why I should feel guilty, why I should accept being treated like garbage in my own home. I'm done listening to your explanations, your manipulations, and your lies." I walked to the kitchen counter where I had prepared a folder full of legal documents that Sarah had prepared and faxed over. "These are eviction papers, Marcus. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, if you're still here, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." "You can't evict me," he protested, his voice becoming shrill with panic. "This is my home too. I've lived here for years. You can't just throw me out on the street. What will people think?" "This has never been your home," I said firmly, my voice carrying an authority I had forgotten I possessed. "This is my home. It's always been my home. You've been living here as my guest, and now that invitation is permanently revoked." "But I take care of you," he shouted, desperation making his voice crack. "You need me. You can't manage on your own. You're old and confused, Anne." "I'm 58 years old, not 98, I interrupted. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own life, my own finances, and my own relationships. The only thing that was confusing me was believing your lies for so long." The next few hours were a blur of arguments, threats, and emotional manipulation. Marcus tried everything in his playbook: guilt, anger, false promises of change, threats about what other family members would think. He even tried crocodile tears, claiming he had only been trying to protect me and that everything he did was out of love. "I'm your son," he shouted at one point, real tears streaming down his face. "You can't just throw me out. What kind of mother does that to her own child? I've sacrificed everything for you." "You're right," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You are my son, and I will always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Love doesn't mean letting you steal from me, lie to me, and treat me like I'm worthless. And you haven't sacrificed anything for me, Marcus. You've been living off my money while convincing me I should be grateful for your charity." Marcus tried to physically intimidate me next, standing over me and raising his voice, using his size and gender to try to make me back down. But I wasn't the same broken woman he had locked in that basement 2 weeks ago. "If you threaten me again," I said quietly, looking him directly in the eyes, "I'll call the police right now and have you arrested for assault." Sarah Mitchell, my attorney, is expecting my call tonight to confirm that you received the eviction papers. Don't give me a reason to make that call about something more serious. The mention of a lawyer seemed to deflate him completely. He realized that this wasn't just an emotional outburst or a temporary rebellion. I had legal representation, financial resources, and most importantly, I had found my voice and my strength. "You hired a lawyer?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I hired the best elder abuse attorney in the state," I replied. "Along with a private investigator who's been documenting your spending habits, your lifestyle, and building a case for criminal prosecution. Did you really think you could steal from me for 15 years without consequences?" Over the next week, the reality of the situation began to sink in for Marcus. He tried to negotiate, tried to claim he had been planning to tell me about the money eventually, tried to convince me that he deserved compensation for taking care of me all these years. But I had documentation of everything, every forged signature, every intercepted letter, every lie he had told. David, the private investigator, had been thorough in building the case. We had bank records showing that Marcus had been living far beyond what his legitimate income should have allowed, all funded by my money. Marcus tried to take things that belonged to me when he moved out, but I had inventoried everything and had my lawyer on speed dial. He tried to access my bank accounts one last time and discovered they had all been frozen to him. He even tried to turn other family members against me, but when they heard the full story and saw the documented evidence of his fraud, most of them supported my decision. My sister Margaret flew out from California to be with me during Marcus's move-out day. She was amazed by the transformation she saw in me, but also heartbroken by what I had endured. "I should have insisted on talking to you myself," she said, tears in her eyes. "I should have known something was wrong when you never responded to my letters, when you always sounded so defeated and anxious on the phone." "It's not your fault," I assured her, taking her hand. Marcus was very good at manipulation. He convinced everyone, including me, that I was just a confused old woman who needed constant supervision. He made it seem like he was making sacrifices to take care of me, when in reality, he was stealing my life. Margaret helped me go through 15 years of accumulated belongings, separating what was mine from what Marcus had claimed over the years. It was painful work, each item triggering memories of how Marcus had gradually taken control of every aspect of my existence. "Look at this," Margaret said, holding up a beautiful necklace that had been my mother's. "I remember you wearing this to my daughter's wedding 20 years ago. Why is it hidden away in a box?" "Marcus said it was too valuable for me to wear," I explained. "He claimed he was protecting it from me, but really he was just making sure I couldn't access anything that might make me feel valuable or independent." The hardest part wasn't dealing with Marcus's anger or the family drama that followed his eviction. The hardest part was forgiving myself for allowing the abuse to continue for so long. Sarah, my lawyer, helped me understand that I had been a victim of systematic manipulation and financial abuse. "You weren't weak," she explained during one of our meetings. "You were grieving, isolated, and subjected to expert psychological manipulation. Marcus spent 15 years carefully constructing a reality where you believed you were powerless and dependent. Breaking free from that kind of systematic abuse takes incredible strength. But more than forgiveness, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. For the first time in 15 years, I could make decisions about my own life without asking permission or feeling guilty. I could spend my own money without justification. I could invite friends over without worrying about anyone's approval. I could live without fear. The first thing I did was buy myself a car. For 15 years, Marcus had controlled where I could go and when, claiming that I was too old or too confused to drive safely. But my driver's license was still valid, and after a few practice sessions in a parking lot, I felt confident behind the wheel again. The sense of freedom that came with having my own transportation was indescribable. I could go grocery shopping and buy what I wanted to eat instead of what Marcus deemed appropriate. I could visit the library, the park, or just drive around town enjoying the scenery. I could go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without asking anyone's permission. I started traveling, something I had always wanted to do but Marcus had convinced me I couldn't afford. My first trip was to visit Margaret in California. Seeing her home, meeting her grandchildren, and being welcomed into her family with open arms was emotional and healing. "I've missed you so much," Margaret said as we sat in her garden, watching her grandchildren play. "I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped wondering if you were really okay. I'm so proud of you for finding the strength to break free." I took a cruise to Alaska, something Robert and I had always planned to do together but never had the chance. Standing on the deck of that ship, watching whales breach in the distance and glaciers calve into the sea, I felt Robert's presence with me. I knew he would have been proud of me for finally claiming the life he had tried to ensure I could have. Each trip, each new experience, each moment of joy was like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been stolen. I took art classes, something I had always wanted to try but never had the confidence to attempt. I joined a book club at the local library, where I met intelligent, interesting people who valued my opinions and enjoyed my company. I also started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping other women recognize the signs of financial abuse and emotional manipulation. The work was difficult but incredibly meaningful, as I met woman after woman whose stories echoed my own in heartbreaking ways. Elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in America, the shelter director explained to me during my training. Financial abuse by adult children is particularly devastating because it combines the betrayal of family trust with systematic theft and manipulation. Through my volunteer work, I learned that my story wasn't unique. There were thousands of older adults being financially abused by their own children, isolated from family and friends, and convinced that they were burdens who should be grateful for basic care. I started speaking at community centers and senior groups about financial abuse, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. Every time I told my story, I saw recognition in someone's eyes, that moment when they realized they weren't alone, that what was happening to them had a name, and that they deserved better. The hardest part for many victims, I would tell these groups, is accepting that someone who claims to love you can systematically steal from you and manipulate you. We want to believe that family members have our best interests at heart, but sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us most. Marcus and I have had several conversations since he moved out, though our relationship remains strained and complicated. He's had to get a real job for the first time in years, a job that actually pays him instead of just giving him access to someone else's money. He's living in a small apartment and struggling with finances for the first time in his adult life. Part of me feels sorry for him. He's my son, and I do love him, despite everything he did to me. But I also recognize that learning to be self-sufficient and taking responsibility for his actions is probably the best thing that could have happened to him. "I want to change, Mom," he said during our last conversation. "I want to be the son you deserve. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry." "I'm glad you're sorry," I replied. But apologies don't undo 15 years of abuse, and they don't automatically restore trust. If you want a relationship with me in the future, it will have to be built on honesty, respect, and equality. No more manipulation, no more financial dependence, no more treating me like I'm less than human. Marcus is in therapy now, working with a counselor who specializes in addiction and abuse issues. Because that's what his behavior was, an addiction to control and to living off other people's resources. He's starting to understand the impact of his actions, though I suspect it will be a long journey for him to truly comprehend the damage he caused. "I never thought of it as abuse," he admitted during one particularly honest conversation. "I convinced myself I was taking care of you, that you needed my help and protection. I didn't realize I was stealing your life." "The road to recovery starts with acknowledging the truth," I told him. "But recovery isn't just about understanding what you did wrong, it's about taking concrete steps to make sure it never happens again." Some people have asked me if I regret how harshly I handled the situation. They think I should have just talked to Marcus, should have given him a chance to explain or change gradually. But those people don't understand what it's like to be slowly crushed under the weight of someone else's control for 15 years. They don't understand that I had tried talking, tried reasoning, tried pleading for basic respect countless times over the years. They don't understand that gradual change isn't possible when someone has such complete power over your life that they can literally lock you in a basement and go on vacation. Abuse thrives in gradual escalation, Sarah explained to me. Abusers don't start by locking their victims in basements. They start with small controls, small manipulations, slowly eroding their victim's sense of self-worth and independence until major abuse seems normal. That basement was supposed to be my prison, but it became my liberation. Those 2 weeks of forced isolation gave me the time and space I needed to discover not just the truth about my finances, but the truth about my worth as a human being. I learned that I didn't need anyone's permission to live my life with dignity. I learned that I didn't need anyone's approval to make my own decisions. I learned that I certainly didn't need to tolerate abuse from anyone, not even my own son. Today, I'm living in a beautiful apartment downtown with a view of the river. The apartment is mine, I bought it outright with my own money, and no one can take it away from me. I wake up every morning knowing that the day ahead is mine to plan, mine to enjoy, mine to live on my own terms. I have genuine friendships now, relationships based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than dependence and manipulation. I'm dating a wonderful man named James who I met at the book club. He treats me with kindness and respect, and he's amazed by my story of transformation and survival. "You're the strongest person I know," James tells me regularly. "What you survived, what you overcame, it's incredible. But I don't feel like a survivor anymore. I feel like someone who's finally living. I have plans for the future that extend far beyond just getting through each day. I'm learning to paint watercolors, I'm planning a trip to Europe, and I'm considering writing a book about my experience to help other people in similar situations. Most importantly, I'm helping other women who are trapped in situations similar to what I experienced. Through my volunteer work, speaking engagements, and informal mentoring, I've been able to help dozens of women recognize financial abuse and take steps to reclaim their lives. Just last month, I received a letter from a woman named Dorothy who attended one of my talks at a senior center. She wrote to thank me for helping her realize that her daughter's control over her finances wasn't normal or acceptable. With the help of resources I provided, she was able to regain control of her own money and establish boundaries with her daughter. "Your story gave me permission to value myself," Dorothy wrote. "I thought I was being ungrateful and difficult, but you helped me understand that I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of your age, your financial situation, or your family relationships. Don't let anyone convince you that abuse is love, that control is care, or that you should be grateful for scraps of basic human decency. Financial abuse often starts slowly and gradually escalates. Warning signs include family members who insist on controlling your finances, for your own good, who isolate you from friends and family, who make you feel guilty for wanting basic necessities, or who claim you're too old or confused to make your own decisions. If someone in your life is controlling your money, your mail, your phone calls, or your access to other people, that's abuse, even if they claim it's for your protection. If someone is living off your income while making you feel like a burden, that's theft, even if they're family. And if you're someone who is taking advantage of an elderly family member or loved one, know that your actions have consequences. The person you're abusing is stronger than you think, smarter than you realize, and more capable than you're giving them credit for. Elder abuse is a crime, and it's being taken more seriously by law enforcement and the legal system every year. More importantly, the people you're victimizing deserve to live their remaining years with dignity, independence, and respect. Don't underestimate the power of someone who has finally had enough. Don't assume that isolation and manipulation will keep your victims silent forever. And don't convince yourself that your actions are motivated by love or protection. Abuse is never love, and control is never care. Marcus thought he was punishing me by locking me in that basement. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift possible, 2 weeks of solitude to remember who I really am, to discover the resources I had available, and to find the strength to reclaim my life. Sometimes our lowest moments become the foundation for our highest achievements. Sometimes our darkest hours lead us to our brightest days. Sometimes the thing that's meant to break us becomes the thing that makes us stronger than we ever imagined possible. I'm 58 years old, and I'm living the best years of my life. I have my dignity, my independence, and my self-respect. I have genuine relationships based on mutual care and consideration. I have financial security and the freedom to make my own choices about how to spend my time and money. Most importantly, I have the knowledge that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to make me feel small, worthless, or grateful for basic human dignity. I am worth more than that, and so are you. The basement that was supposed to break me became the place where I found my strength. The son who was supposed to protect me became the catalyst for my independence. The situation that was supposed to destroy me became the beginning of my real life. I want to end by sharing something Robert wrote in one of those letters I found in the basement, letters that Marcus kept from me for 15 years but that ultimately became the key to my freedom. My dearest Rosalind, Robert had written, you are stronger than you know, more capable than anyone might believe, and more deserving of respect and love than anyone who tries to make you feel otherwise. Don't let anyone convince you that you're less than the remarkable woman I fell in love with 40 years ago. Those words, written by my husband as he was dying, sustained me through the darkest moments of discovering the truth about my situation. They remind me daily that I am valuable, that I am worthy, and that I deserve to live my life on my own terms. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and empowerment, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more inspiring stories of people who refuse to stay down. Write in the comments about a time when you found strength in an unexpected place, or share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to take control of their life. Remember, you are stronger than you know, more capable than others might believe, and more worthy of respect and dignity than anyone who tries to make you feel otherwise. Don't let anyone lock you in a basement, literal or metaphorical, and convince you that's where you belong. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, remember that every ending can be a new beginning, every prison can become a doorway to freedom, and every moment of despair can become the foundation for a life of hope and joy. You deserve to be free. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to live your life with dignity and on your own terms. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and don't let anyone convince you that you're not worth fighting for. Because you are worth fighting for. You are worth saving. And sometimes, the person who needs to do the fighting and the saving is you.